Nancy and her husband were blessed with a lovely daughter. After she was born, the three lived together as a happy family. But it wasn't long before their daughter started to cry at night. Both Nancy and her husband had jobs, and the two of them were exhausted physically. But one day, a strange phenomenon started to occur, where she stopped crying at night whenever she saw my husband. What is the shocking truth behind this? Today, we have two stories for you. This is the first. The story of my daughter crying at night and my ex-husband. It's a story from a long time ago, but let me tell you about the time that I had to escape from a bad situation with my ex-husband. We first met at work, started dating, and eventually got married. He had a good work ethic, and no matter what problems came up, he would always find a way to fix things. His colleagues would say things like, "That's Edward for you," and things like that. His juniors admire him and his seniors respected him, so he quickly rose through the ranks at the company. After marrying my ex-husband, we continued to work together and shared the housework equally. He never so much as complained about housework. Everyone would always tell me, "You found the nicest husband." A year after we got married, I gave birth to a beautiful daughter. As soon as we found out it was a girl, my ex-husband put a lot of thought into what to name our daughter, even as far as name meanings and things like that. Eventually, we decided on our daughter's name. My daughter was really calm when she was born. She didn't cry often and ate well. She was so calm that I started to think this is really how parenting is. I was on maternity leave at the time, but with only one source of income, I thought maybe finances would be tight. I thought that if I didn't do anything, we'd have a hard time making ends meet. After a few months, I went back to work, but we were still having a hard time. I thought we were living happily together. After I returned to work, my ex-husband got more and more busy. I was worried about that. I was worried that the burden of dealing with housework and childcare would all be left on me. About 6 months after our daughter was born, she started crying at night. I knew that it was normal for babies to cry at night, but my ex-husband wasn't so understanding. He was busy with work at the time, and I could tell the crying was frustrating him. He would say things like, "What's she crying for like this every night? Can't she just let us sleep?" Venting out his frustration at the situation, I can understand his feelings. The crying wasn't easy to deal with. I was tired and sleep deprived as well. But she was just a baby, and babies cry. I was starting to get frustrated at my ex-husband complaining about our baby every day. I was still so sleep deprived and started to think I couldn't take this anymore. So one day, my ex-husband proposed we take turns dealing with her crying every day. We could sleep separately. On my day, I would sleep with the baby, and on his day, he would do the same. That way, each of us could have a day where we could sleep until morning undisturbed. He said, "This way we can have a day that we can sleep well. It'd be nice, right? If we don't split the work, neither of us can sleep anyways." He had a good point, so from that day we started taking care of her in shifts. The person watching our daughter would sleep in the room next door with our daughter, and the other would sleep in the bedroom with earplugs in. Our daughter continued to cry every night. How much longer are things going to be like this? She still can't understand anything we say to her yet either. And my ex-husband was always saying things like that. This is how things are taking care of a baby, is what I thought, but never said it aloud to him. I thought I was ready to raise a child as well, but things were a lot harder than I imagined they would be. A little while after, we started taking care of our baby in rotation. I noticed she was never crying anymore on my ex-husband's day. The next morning, he said, "Hey, isn't it great? She didn't cry at all last night," with a really happy look on his face. I guess even babies have days where they don't cry, depending on their mood and feelings. I didn't think much of it at the time. But from that day on, for some reason, she would never cry on my ex-husband's turn. Even on his turn, he would always sleep well. But on my turn, she would still cry, and I was getting more and more exhausted. My ex-husband said, "Sorry she only cries on your night. It'd be nice if you could get some rest as well." Things kept on like this, and one day, while talking to my mother-in-law, she said something odd. "I heard your daughter doesn't cry at night at all. That's really lucky. It's really hard dealing with the crying." I was surprised to hear her say this. "Did my husband tell you that she isn't crying at night?" I asked. "He was bragging how quiet she is at night, that she lets him sleep well. When Edward was a baby, he cried so much at night, we really struggled to deal with it." That's not true at all. She cries all the time when I watch her. She cries so much at night that we started watching her in shifts. I couldn't understand what he was telling his mom. The next day, I went to check on my ex-husband and our daughter while they were sleeping. They were just sleeping normally, and I couldn't see anything out of place. Maybe I was just overthinking things, I thought, and went back to sleep. But the next morning, when I went in to check on them, our daughter's face was pale. So I quickly woke up my ex-husband, and we went to the hospital straight away to get her looked at. A nurse rushed to help us immediately, and they took her into an examination room straight away. While sitting in the waiting room, I thought that I didn't feel alive anymore. We waited for around 30 minutes, then the doctor called us in. He told us that it's possible there's vomit stuck in her throat, and that it wasn't life-threatening, but it'll take some time for her to recover. Also, it's possible she had been like that for quite some time, and because of that, there could be some lasting side effects. His words filled me with dread. The doctor asked, if there was something blocking her throat, normally she would start coughing and crying. Does your baby normally cry at night? So I told him about the situation, that she cries quite a lot at night, but never seems to cry when my ex-husband watches her. Then the doctor replied with, "I see. Then let's do some blood tests to make sure everything's okay." I agreed. It would take a few days for the results to come in, so we took her back home together once things calmed down. A few days passed, and we got a message from the hospital saying the test results were in, and that they wanted us to come see them. I went with my daughter right away. The results showed there was sleeping medicine in her bloodstream. I was in shock when I heard that. "Do you know how this could have happened?" the doctor asked. I told him I had no idea. "Then please ask your husband about this immediately. We have an obligation to report this to the police," is what he said. When I asked my ex-husband about it, he confessed everything to me. "I just wanted her to sleep quietly. It helps both of us, right? She doesn't understand what's going on. What's wrong with giving her a little medicine?" he said, completely unashamed. "I did it for our health, for the good of our family," he said. He gave her medicine made for adults, way too strong for a baby. That was the only time he seemed evil to me. I was furious, shouting at him. I said, "No matter how hard things are, you should always put the needs of your child first. Isn't that obvious? I can't be with you if you can't keep calm no matter how hard things are." I stormed out and told the hospital right away. The doctor said that they can use a hair sample to tell how long she was fed the medicine. Then they contacted the police, and my ex-husband was taken away. What the police found was that the medicine used was prescribed to him a few years ago after he developed insomnia from stress at work. One night, when our daughter's crying was particularly bad, he remembered that he still had some medicine left over, and mixed some in with her milk. I divorced him immediately. There was an investigation surrounding it, but due to other larger cases taking over the news, it didn't show up in the papers. It's been around 20 years since then. Yesterday, my daughter also gave birth. I'm a grandma now. My daughter says, if the baby starts crying at night, I know it'll be hard, but me and my husband can get through it. Let me know if you need help with anything, I told her. I don't know what happened to my ex-husband after we divorced. I don't care either. Anyone who would do something like that to my precious daughter is better off dead in my mind. I just became a grandparent, so I felt like it'd be good to share my story. And with that, our first story comes to an end. A father who'd do anything to get some shut-eye. Quite a shocking story, wasn't it? Now on to the next story. Another dark story about a baby. The cause of my neighbor's child being disabled was me. Yesterday, I learned the truth about what happened. I'm not sure what I should do from now on. I have a baby less than a year old, and I live in an apartment. Living in the same apartment building is a very nice woman. Sometimes we talk a little bit while taking out the garbage. Until recently, we had never done more than small talk, but a little while ago, she invited me to her apartment. It was only really to have some tea together, but she also said, "Please bring your daughter as well." So I did my best to convince my daughter to come along. She didn't have kids of her own yet, and it seemed like she was excited to. So she was hugging and cuddling with my daughter a lot, and having a lot of fun. We didn't have the chance to have tea together after, but a few months later, while talking with her outside, my neighbor told me she had gotten pregnant. I didn't see her much lately, so I guess her morning sickness was pretty bad. I happily congratulated her. And I thought I should try and help her out with things. I gave her some diapers and clothes that my daughter didn't use. I wondered if maybe she didn't want to get these kind of things, so I asked her if I was going too far. "It'll help a lot. She'll grow out of things right away, so it'd be a waste to buy too many." She was happy with it. But after her due date, I didn't hear from her at all. I didn't see her around the apartment either. About a month later, she contacted me. There was something wrong with her newborn daughter's heart, and she needed some time to deal with everything. She said to me, "I know you were excited to hear the news. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier," she apologized. I was shocked that her daughter was in such a condition. I started to think about what I could do to help them. She was always really nice to me, so I wanted to do something for her as well. For now, they're having to go to the hospital every day, so I thought I could at least make things a little bit easier from there. I would leave early every morning to take out her trash for her, and leave a bit of food for her a few times a week. Also, they were really careful to make sure their daughter didn't get sick, so I was making sure to stay healthy as well. When I would go into her apartment, I would leave my daughter with my husband. From the look on her face, you could tell this was not the life she expected becoming a mother. "I'm really sorry for how things are. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know," I said to her, taking care not to make empty promises like, "It'll be okay." She replied with, "Thank you. I'm glad to have such a good friend near me in times like this." Compared to before, it seems we had become a lot closer now. Things continued like this, and one day we had another chance to talk again. When I asked about her daughter's condition, she said that they still didn't know what might have caused the issues. She told me her doctor said that she had a weirdly high amount of measles antibodies early in the pregnancy. There's a good possibility that was the cause, but they're not certain. My heart skipped when I heard her say measles. Did my daughter give her the measles? My daughter did catch the measles around the beginning of her pregnancy when we went to visit her house. She didn't have any symptoms, but a few days after that, she broke out in a fever. We took her to the doctor and they gave us some medicine. The day after, she had a rash on her body, so we took her back again. They diagnosed her with measles then. We took a lot of care not to pass it on to anyone else and stayed inside our apartment from then on. A few months passed, and that's when my neighbor told me she was pregnant. So maybe when we went to visit her that one time, the measles virus my daughter was carrying could have passed it on to my neighbor. My neighbor's daughter had a heart defect. When I heard that it might have been measles, I couldn't say anything. When I got home, I started looking up information on measles in pregnant women. Judging from what I read, the chances that it was caused by me were high, and I didn't know what to do. It became really hard to meet up with her after that. I still took out her garbage and left her food, but I feel so guilty I can't meet them face to face. My neighbor, still not knowing anything about the situation, goes out shopping on Saturdays when her husband's home, and wanted me to watch her daughter for her. I don't have any reason to say no, but staying with them long feels wrong, and I'll say I have errands to do and leave early. Every time I look at her, I can't help but apologize over and over in my mind. What should I do now? Should I tell her the truth? She told me she stopped thinking so much about what happened. If I tell her the truth, nothing will change. It'd only be for my own self-satisfaction, I guess. I wonder if it's right to tell her my daughter might have had measles when we visited. I can't even tell my own husband either. After letting out all my pent-up feelings, my story has gotten a bit long. Sorry. But after calming down and thinking about things, I'm surprised at how careless I was. My daughter might resent me if I were to talk about it. I might get sick if things keep going like this. Before I knew about this, I just wanted to help her out. But once I knew that I might have been the cause of her daughter's problems, I feel more and more motivated to help them. But the only time my heart stops pounding is when I'm helping them, so maybe one reason I'm helping them is to help myself as well. I thought about moving away, but I don't think it's right of me to run away after what I've done to them. I can't leave. I also thought that maybe it's possible that someone else could have passed on the virus to her. But the more I think about it, I have a habit of assuming the worst. Even if I try to think that it wasn't my daughter who gave it to them, if I think about the timing and everything, it lines up perfectly with when my daughter caught it. She didn't have a fever at the time, and we were only there for a few hours, so it probably didn't pass on to her. Even if I think like that, I found online that it's very possible for it to spread in that time. I know it's not good to keep looking things up like this without knowing the cause. There's no point to thinking about things like this either. I know it's not good, but I can't help it. If I imagine it happening to my daughter, I feel horrible. I might be pretending to be a heroine born from tragedy, and it might look like that from others' point of view, but I don't have the time to play heroine. I'm just thinking of their daughter all the time. I don't know what I want to do now. I feel sick with myself talking like this, and I'm sorry if I made anyone uncomfortable. This concludes the stories of My Daughter Only Doesn't Cry with My Husband and My Neighbor's Daughter Was Born with a Defect.